welcome to the Voices in Recovery podcast. Voices in Recovery is produced by Freedom's Path Recovery Society, a registered Canadian charity. If you enjoy the podcast, please consider a donation at www.freedomspathrecoverysociety.ca. All donations go directly to assisting Freedom's Path in providing services free of charge and helps us keep the podcast going. We are grateful for any and all donations. This podcast discusses difficult topics such as childhood abuse, drug and alcohol use, sexuality, sexualized trauma, and more. If you are under the age of 18, please speak with your legal guardian prior to listening. The opinions expressed during the podcast are those of the individual and not those of Voices in Recovery or Freedom's Path Recovery Society. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the podcast.
This podcast is being recorded on the traditional land of the Blackfoot Confederacy. This consists of the Kainai, Piikani, Siksika, and the Blackfeet in the U.S. We acknowledge the Stoney Nakoda, which consists of the Bearspaw, Morley, and Chiniki. We acknowledge the Tsuut'ina Huadene and the Métis, Inuit, status and non-status from all of Turtle Island, and those who are visiting. We are all treaty people.
So tell us about you. This is about you. So Dave, thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
You can tell us your whole story if you want. We have an hour.
Are we on?
Oh yeah. He'll edit out some of the BS, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do I tell you about me? I mean,
You've been in recovery for a long time.
I have. I sobered up when I was 25. So,
right on.
I would have to say, by the grace of God, somehow I got to stay sober, coming up 42 years.
Wow, congrats.
It's been a heck of a journey, and I think the last 3 years have been some of the best.
Yeah.
The last 3 years have been some of the best, and my experience in AA and the 12 steps, I mean, saved my life. There's no question, but I was a very tough customer around surrendering, running the show. It only took me about 38 years to get the second half of step one.
Well, that's good. That's good news, man, because I'm still working on it. I'm still working on it.
I'm sure you are. I look around and I think, wow,
yeah.
what? And I just didn't know that I didn't know. What kept me sober all those years? Working with others, I suppose, doing service, poking away at it, traveling the world, looking for spirituality, India, Peru, Indonesia, all kinds of teachers. I mean, always in the 12-step world, still looking everywhere for some way to kind of feel, 100% comfortable in my own skin. And, it was maybe I'm a tough customer. The goods were always there. The offering was always there. It was really difficult for me to see it. I can't say that it hasn't been an amazing life, as it has. I mean, when I sobered up, when I came to the 12 steps into AA, my motivation was that I'd had a little girl, or this wonderful lady had picked me, and obviously she wasn't well because she picked me. and
that's fair.
I've
been there.
Yeah, I was not a good pick. I didn't think I was. Even at the time, I thought, oh my God, she must be crazy. But we were pregnant, and I hadn't gone to high school. I'd been a practicing alcoholic and addict since I was 15. I was in the street in Toronto, the street in Vancouver. It was, my heroes were all criminals. I was one of them, I was in the business. I was not the best pick, and I didn't have a career. I was one of those kids that didn't think he was going to live to be 21 or let alone 25. So, it was kind of the shit hit the fan, and I had to do something. And my older brother was sober. Got sober just September 3rd. It was 44 years for Bobby.
Oh,
And,
that's
yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, he's still sober and still my older brother.
Good for him, man.
And Christmas 1978, he bought me a big book for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
It was under the tree, wrapped.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, my brother got me something for Christmas. And I was like, oh, thank you. But I read it, the next year. I read it, drinking beer, reading the book, and thought, well, I guess I'm an alcoholic. But then my rationale at the time was, so's everybody I know. And I mean, I didn't hang with people who weren't. But anyway, he got sober. He was sober about a year and a half, and when I thought I better do something, and I didn't really plan to get sober, right? I planned to get the heat off, maybe try to figure this out, and I lots of times in the the years that I drank, which I started when I was about 13 or 14 till the time I quit, which was only 12 years or so. Lots of times I tried to quit. I was a good quitter. And lots of times I said, that's it. That's never going to happen again.
Well, you never stopped quitting, though.
I never stopped quitting. and so anyway, I came into the 12-step world, and the old Garnet block down on 10th Street upstairs, not around back downstairs, but upstairs.
Oh, before it went downstairs.
Yeah, before it went downstairs. And,
a long time before, probably.
There was some good old boys there, and I got joined the North Hill group, which I don't think exists anymore, and I used to go over to the Glenmore group in the basement at the bakery.
When it was in Marteloup?
Yes.
Yeah.
And, and
that was a cool old place over there.
Yeah. Noon hour down at Knox United, and thank God for United Churches.
Yeah, that's right.
and
yeah, no joke. On the one hand, thank you.
Yeah. I stayed sober in the early days by going to a ton of meetings. I couldn't read the book. I was talk about Space Cadet. I had no idea whether my ass was bored or punched. I was, unemployable. People now, go to therapy for anxiety. I couldn't go to the mall. I mean, I couldn't go out of the house for a while. I was, except to go to meetings and stuff. I was, couldn't answer the phone. But I didn't consider going to a doctor. I knew I was, that was part of my alcoholism, part of my mental illness. That I mean, back in that time, we didn't have it wasn't as obvious. People didn't really know what we were working with. Anyway.
Medical would have been way different 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. And anxiety and depression. I didn't know what depression was. I knew what depression was, but we didn't call it that.
Yeah, nobody talked about it like they do now, right?
No.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've never been a big therapy guy. I mean, I think that self-awareness is helpful, and it's part of the journey, and I mean, I went to personal development groups for years, trying to, figure myself out.
Yeah.
And till I finally discovered that, I didn't really have to figure myself out. I just had to have this relationship with God as I understand him, and things would flow. Or things were flowing anyway, but I could be in the flow.
Yeah, in the flow instead of against it.
Yes, so I mean, a lot of years went by. I discovered Big Book Studies 2 years into recovery. Old Irish Mike, and he was doing studies with a fellow by the name of Stu. So there was Irish Stu and Irish Mike back in the 80s, early 80s, and they helped a lot of people, and that was in the Lakeview United Church.
Okay.
and we were in the basement down there a long time ago. And I took a ton of people to Big Book Studies. And And even though it was like the fog it took a lot of years to lift, and I see it. You know, guys come in and I'm working with guys. I sponsor guys, and they're like, yeah. But it's hard to find anything. You know, our conditioning's so strong, and often I think welded in by trauma. We didn't. But when I came in, we didn't have spell trauma.
Yeah.
Let alone that trauma had something to do with.
Well, it still hadn't kind of come out of the shell shock era, right? Like the PTSD. Once that opened up, then people started to look at trauma.
Yeah, and what does it do? You know.
Yeah.
And I think trauma is like a welding arc. It just welds in our beliefs about ourselves, our fears, what it actually does, and how do we melt that? You know, how do we, and I think it is meltable. I know it is meltable.
Yeah.
And we melt it every day in the rooms with love. And forgive me for being so serious, but
oh no, I'm with you. It's all good.
Yeah,
that's how we do it, though.
Yeah, that is
we
how we
reshape it by love. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's been an amazing trip. That lady that I was married to, she and I had a couple of kids, and they're both in recovery now.
Right on.
And it's interesting that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? And, I mean, you don't have children, do you?
Nope.
No, and do you? All right, 2.
Just one.
Yeah. Right on. Well, it's wasn't long. Well, I didn't know that I didn't have any idea how to be a dad.
It's a big job.
I just had no idea that I didn't know. And my dad was an alcoholic. He was a kind of a functioning. I mean, he was a functioning alcoholic. He was a high bottom drunk, and God bless him. And it's funny, years into my recovery, I finally accepted him just as he is, and then I was able to have a relationship with him and enjoy him, and stop trying to change him. And it was like I kind of got Al-Anon.
Yeah, yeah, sounds like it.
Yes,
that's a nice transition, though.
Yes, it was like wow. Because when I first sobered up, one of my missions was I was going to sober up the rest of my family, and my dad included.
Yeah.
And anyway, the truth is that out of 5 of us kids in the family, right now today all 5 are sober.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, which is kind of neat.
That's really cool, Dave.
We're all older now, but and my 2 kids, I've my son's sober 12 years and my daughter 5. And I got divorced at about 11 years in recovery. I mean, you go through those things. Like I didn't know how to be in a relationship.
It was a nightmare.
Not giving any courses on relationships.
Yeah, no thanks.
And so about 11 years in, we were done, and I didn't. I mean, I wasn't not a really good catch no matter what. So we got divorced, and like a lot of guys, I got remarried pretty quickly.
Okay. Is that common? I'm not sure of the stats. Yeah.
Well, it seems that way. I was kind of a rebound.
Okay.
And with a nice lady, and she was somewhat in recovery, and we had a son. So my 3rd child, and he's 30 now. So that was so. Those have been gifts. Having kids and having them be happy and successful have been gifts for me through my life. I was an entrepreneur, and most of my life in recovery, and had some success. But self-employed is a fine line between self-employed and unemployed.
You got that right. Yeah, I've been self-employed for sure.
Yeah, and I was self-employed because I think certainly in the beginning I was not employable, and I had not really had a job before, and I didn't have any education, so I had to start my own businesses. So most of my working life was running my own businesses, and those, that was an area that I found really difficult to turn over, to not be running the show. So I ran my businesses often out of fear. And you know, so I mean, I had some moderate success and over the years, and that worked.
Right on.
I could.
Well, because you had to kind of make yourself, right? Like as you recovered, you had to just kind of dig in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and so I don't know where to go from there. I mean,
how has it evolved for you? I mean, because 40 years is a long time to be in recovery and sober, right? So it must have taken some serious, dips and valleys and stuff. But because now you've got, I was just checking out your YouTube this afternoon, and you've got like quite a few videos on there about being like a good dad, right? Because that's is that where you work mostly now?
Yeah,
that's what you're doing. Can you tell us about that?
I can,
because it's really cool. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's a couple of years ago. I had to close a business that I had down, and that was difficult. I mean, I was importing from Indonesia, and I had a couple of stores called Valley and Beyond, and I was I was so identified with that.
For sure. Because that's how people would ask me if I knew you. They'd always say Dave at Valley and Beyond, and I'd be like, I know who he is, but I don't know him.
Yeah. So I was really identified with that. I was like, that was who I'd become. And so when the economy turned in 2016, 17, I was not prepared. And so when the tide went out, I realized that I had no pants on. And
uncomfortable for sure.
It was uncomfortable. I mean, I did everything to hang on to that, including sleeping in the store. And I mean, I really did not want to let that go. And
I appreciate that, man, because you believe in it, right?
Oh, well, I think I believed. Of course, I believed in it, but it was more of a. It was out of fear. I was. I owed money and to creditors and all that kind of stuff, and letting it go meant I had to face that, so that it was difficult, and then thank God COVID came along.
Okay.
And all of a sudden I looked like a genius. Closed my business just before.
Good timing, Dave. Well done.
Oh yeah.
Well done.
But that was such bullshit. It was I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't tuck away a couple of million, and I was like, I'm not sure what's next, and I've been working with guys. I've been involved with men's groups inside and outside of the 12-step world for a lot of years, and I've led men's groups and work. I went actually and found a men's group years ago in '99 because I wanted to know how to be a dad, and most of what I was getting on advice around being a dad was from the women in my life. God bless them.
Yeah.
But they wanted me to be a better mom. And so I went and found a large group of fellas, and that I many of them were very successful as fathers, and I learned a lot about being a good dad, and did a lot of things with my kids that I had not done earlier because I was uncomfortable. I didn't know how to really be with them. I wasn't the dad that got down on the floor and played with his kids.
Yeah.
That was difficult for me, so over the last couple of years, I spent some time asking in prayer, and what's next? What do I do? I'm healthy. I've got I'm imagining a lot of years left.
Yeah, why not?
And still tearing around the country on my Harley. And,
exactly. I can't see you stopping anytime soon.
No, and so it really came to me that if I had something that I wanted to give back that was besides working with fellas in taking people through the steps and sponsoring and all that kind of stuff. It was in the area for dads, in recovery who want to be great dads.
Yeah.
And as I started to talk about it, I realized that there wasn't much out there. And I've talked to a lot of people. There's a fellow by the name of Dr. Ray Baker. Do you know Ray Baker?
I don't.
Ray's sober many years, and he's kind of the leading recovery doctor in Canada, maybe in North America. He's really had a lot to do with the changes that have happened in Alberta recently around the recovery model as opposed to the harm reduction model, and what's happened here provincially with the how recovery beds have really grown a lot. The whole model has changed, and people are working together towards helping addicts and alcoholics find their way into the abstinence recovery programs. And Ray had a lot to do with that, and we talked a lot about this. And he said, David, this is such a there's such a spot here for this, and I've talked to a few of the treatment centers, and the guys that are in the profession are very supportive. And so, but I think most importantly, starting last fall, I did interviews with 50 men who were dads in recovery, and I chatted with 50 men about their fears. What was it like? What was the relationship like with their dad? Many of them had dads who didn't show up. Some of them didn't even know their dads. And there was a lot of men who did not have great relationship with their own dad, and hadn't found their way to that great relationship yet.
Yeah.
And a lot of men who had lost their relationship with the mother, and some angry men,
for sure,
and trying to and men who were estranged from their kids. And there's just a real mix.
And 50 is a good number. That's a good cross section of folks, right?
Oh, I talked to some amazing men, and one of the stories that a lot of men sometimes end up having is, my kids would be better off without me.
Yeah,
that's bullshit.
Yeah, totally.
And
unless you don't recover, then it might not be bullshit. Because then you might be dangerous, right? But
yes.
If you're recovering, it makes more sense to reconnect.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I am talking about recovered
for
guys.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe they said that when they were out and using, and even a practicing alcoholic dad is. I mean, kids need their dad.
They do, absolutely.
And even if he is
find a safe way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and we can't control that. I mean, many of us were brought up by alcoholic dads.
Totally.
And I'd have rather had my alcoholic dad than not. So, I've had people say, I've interviewed a bunch of women too. I've interviewed a whole swack of women, probably 20 of them in the last 6 months, who either had married alcoholics and had kids with them.
Okay.
And or both sometimes had an alcoholic dad themselves. Because one of the things I tell dads is that, your kids, your daughter is going to marry a guy like you. And so who do you want to be? Who do you want her to marry? And when are you going to show up?
Yeah.
And the same thing with when I'm talking to dads about their sons. Your son is going to kind of be a dad like you.
Yeah.
And he's gonna treat the lady he marries like you. If you're mad at her, his mother, we got to get past that. And so I help men to get past that. I mean, no matter what she's done or hasn't done, she's worthy of love, and really, and she's the mother of your children. And so what's neat is I'm not a therapist, so I can tell them whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
I can't.
Therapists do it too.
Maybe they
Yeah,
do.
they do.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
yeah. But I mean, I can say because from my own experience and from the, all these fellas that I've interviewed, I can kind of nail them down. Some say, like it's time to shit or get off the pot, and so when guys come to me and I'm doing it. Some one-on-one, but I'm also doing a group. I have a group coming up starting on the 27th of this month, and I'll have 15 fellas in the group, and it'll be 8 weeks over an 8-week period, 8 modules, and then the group all goes into like a private social media group just for dads in recovery, so they can have some support, and because it's not talked about in the rooms.
No, there's lots of stuff that's not. Yeah, you're right, and that's one of them.
Yeah, it's just
and for something that's so common, Dave, it's surprising it's not talked about more.
Yeah,
like and I don't just mean with dads, but moms, like the whole thing.
Yeah,
just child rearing in general, in recovery.
Yeah, it doesn't get talked about, and I understand that. I think that one of the questions I asked men when I did that, interviewed 50 men, I said. Asked them how many courses they've taken on parenting. And almost all of them have taken none. How many books have you read on parenting?
Yeah.
None. I mean, guys know more about tearing their Harley down and putting it back together.
Because you've studied it.
Yeah, because in detail. And then they, know about really raising their kid. And so we have this idea that we're supposed to know.
Yeah. That you're supposed to innately have this information.
Get this figured out.
Yeah.
And, and it's funny because we realize we don't have anything else figured out. But so we're supposed to know how to be a dad. So I think the two most important things that we do in our lives, the very most important things, I think, one being in a relationship, so we marry a gal, and the other being a dad, and neither one of them do we prepare for.
Yeah.
Or do we reach out much and ask for help on?
We certainly don't prepare for it like we prepare for other things.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. We go to university and get a degree or a master's degree.
Spend hours studying.
And for our vocation. And everything's riding in a certain way on their relationship with the mother of our kids. And we haven't even read a book.
Yeah.
About
that's
that.
very interesting,
isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm not a dad, so I've never read a book on it.
Yeah,
I have no interest though.
Have you read any book? Have you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Good for you.
Well, I imagine it's a complicated process though.
Yeah.
Like I would never be prepared for it. Like never. But if something happened and you have to prepare for it, I think it's good to treat it like anything else, right? Like you should study. You should do some prep, like you should
research,
figure it out.
So, but for the most part, guys haven't done that.
For sure, and I can see why, because I'm lazy too, and I probably wouldn't either.
And so I found men pretty receptive to, I mean, I'm kind of at that point in my life. I'm I don't want to think of myself as an elder, but kind of an elder. I can do that. 42 years of being a dad. And now grandparents, and a lot of men, one of their biggest fears is that their kid is going to be an alcoholic or an addict like them. And and that's likely. I mean, it's probable. It's certainly possible.
Yep. Very much.
How old is yours? 15. Wow. A boy or a girl?
Girl.
Wow. 15-year-old girls are hard. Sometimes I remember my daughter when when she kind of often dads go through a thing with their 15-year-old daughter where unless you built a real trust relationship, and lots of us hadn't, they kind of disappear, and there's some, if mom's available, I mean. Often that's where she goes, which is amazing. I mean, I don't want to stereotype, but 15-year-old daughters are exciting.
That's an interesting choice of words.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah.
I like that.
You know, if you're a dad, it's like, holy Toledo, what do I do?
Yeah.
I have another woman in the house, right? And are you still with your mom?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Well, Hal, you're a bit of
Doing all right.
you're an anomaly. Yeah, I'm not going to recruit you in my course.
Well, and he also spends lots of time with his daughter. Like they have a pretty good relationship.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was
Takes
fortunate.
work,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got to put in the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
yeah.
Cool. Very cool.
So yeah, I mean, life goes on. There's lots happening, but this is kind of the big thing for me right now. It's
Yeah.
you know, and I have you know, I've written the curriculum. You know, now remember I'm a guy who didn't go to high school, so some of that's been a bit of a stretch for me.
But good for you for doing it, Dave.
And sometimes it scares the hell out of me.
For sure.
And the doubt comes up.
Yeah.
I'm like, who the hell do you think you are?
Yeah.
And
Those are good questions to ask ourselves for sure.
you know,
Yeah.
and so it's not like I'm like kind of got this all figured out. It really keeps me in you know, a certain amount of humility with the whole thing. I have no, you know, I really praying about it, you know,
Yeah.
on a regular basis. Like okay, is this, you know, step 11, you know, praying only for the knowledge of His will for me and the power to carry that out, you know, and only is a big word. And
It's tricky,
isn't it? Only's a
yeah.
It's like it's the power word in that step, so you know, I mean, there seems to be a big need, you know, and if I can help men get a bit of a leg up,
Yeah.
and grow in confidence, you know, and the recognition of how important their job is. It is super important whether they're, you know, whether they're living with the kids or not.
Yeah.
And I had a guy when we started the last course who had moved to Halifax, and from here, and left his daughter and his ex behind, and came out in the course that he wasn't really, he'd lost touch with them, you know, and so I supported him in you know, picking a time that you call her every week, and out of the course for him, I mean, he really got it. He said, okay, you know, because he was calling her kind of ad hoc whenever, and so every Saturday morning they have a call, and it's, you know, something that, you know, it's like she's 9 or 10, you know, that she can count on, that Dad's going to call me every Saturday morning, and you know, Dad loves me because
they have that contact.
Yeah, he calls me every Saturday morning.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to him a couple of days ago, and you know, he's doing it, and they do FaceTime, and she tells him about her life and what's going on, and he looks forward to the calls, and
Right on.
so it's easy sometimes for men to lose touch if they're not living together.
Yeah.
And or also if maybe the mom is still upset.
For sure. There's always that, right?
You know, and sometimes that goes on for a long time. You know,
Yeah, you just hope people can heal, right? That's
yes.
all. Yeah.
You know, I yes.
Both the parents, right?
Yes. A lot of times,
Yeah.
we, and this is the case with me too. I remember, especially after my second divorce, I was like, what is wrong with me? You know, this is, I didn't marry either one of those women thinking that it wasn't going to be a long-term deal. And so it was, and I think that happens, that either, you know, when marriages break up, either we kind of blame the other person, that bastard, you know, left me.
Yeah.
Or
that's so-and-so.
Yes. Yeah. And or we take it on ourselves and say, you know, what happened? Where did I go wrong? And sometimes I think that our ex-spouse is mad because you know, her story, her conditioning was happily ever after. You know, nobody got married to get divorced.
True. Yeah.
And the story is, we're going to be together. We're going to get through these things. And when that doesn't happen, the disappointment can run very deep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The hurt, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And the hurt that causes so much anger on both sides, right? It just takes time, like everything in recovery, to get some, like you mentioned, confidence, and that's such an important part of it, is teaching the men what we don't know, right? And helping men learn how to focus more on learning about being a dad or being a parent, right? That's the kind of stuff that creates that confidence, which goes into relationships, right? Which they take into other relationships and start believing that they can do these things. They can be.
And I really believe that the family, even if we're not together, is still the family. Do you know what I mean?
Well, especially if they have to interact, right?
Yes. I mean, it's still family. It's just a new model.
That's right.
And, a new version. And my first wife actually became godmother to my son with my second wife.
Okay.
So we ended up, we healed a lot of that stuff pretty quickly. And we got, so she's, all these years have gone by and she's still godmom. He still has a relationship with her as and she's, been there for him because he's, a brother to her two children. It's just, the family just got bigger.
That's cool. And I think that's a really cool example that you probably share with the men, right? Like that example of, you can, like, it might not be okay now, but if you do some stuff over the course of time, this is possible. Because it is, right?
Yeah.
It's just, it happens so much in recovery where at one period of time we don't think it's possible, so maybe we give up on something.
Yeah.
But then maybe years down the line we realize, oh man, why did I give up on that thing? Because now I know how to do it, or something happened to send us in that direction.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Well, what I tell them is that they're going to get to a place where they love that woman again, not romantically, but
as a human.
Yeah, no matter what she's done or hasn't done, she's the mother of your kids, and you're going to love her again. And I've had guys say, no way, but but I'm planting the seed because that is the way,
because it changes.
Yeah, kids are going to grow up. You guys are going to be together forever. Now my first wife married another guy, and I love him. He thought he was getting her, but he was actually getting the whole family. And he works on my Harley. He's got a garage full of Harleys, and he and I are in the garage together often. And she comes out, so it's I'm there for dinners,
and that's that's to me that's such a great story, Dave. Like it's the healing that happens, right?
Yes,
it makes that stuff possible. That's really cool.
And I think my kids appreciate that.
Oh, I bet they do.
And my grandkids appreciate that. I mean, they see that's just what the relationship looks like now. And
that's cool.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel pretty blessed.
Yeah, no doubt, man.
Yeah. And so that, wanting to share that and help men to have, that ease, in their life.
Give them some information to help them.
Yeah, information and love. I mean.
Well, yeah, love is, I guess, a starting point, right?
I feel like a dad, like many of them didn't have.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the old, it's a time in my life when I can do that. And
you're giving them love that they may never have felt before.
Yeah.
Right? And
from a man, an older man.
Right.
From
someone who actually cares about what happens to them.
Yeah.
Like
and
in a very
kids.
genuine way.
And their kids. In the last course.
Of course.
Last course I did, we had, there was 14 men we started. We finished with 13. One guy didn't finish, but didn't, we were in about 3 or 4 weeks and I think he got a little too hot for him. Anyway, but out of the 14 men that we started with, I think there was 36 kids. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. And 22 X's.
That's a classroom size.
Yeah.
Kids.
36 kids and 22 X's.
Wow.
And X's and current wives. So that's a lot of folks.
Yeah, that's a lot of impact.
Yeah, it has the potential for a lot of impact. Yeah. And one guy had 7 kids and 4 wives.
God.
I love him.
No doubt, man.
Yeah.
That's a busy dude. That's a busy dude. I appreciate that.
Yeah, he's way more in recovery now.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So, I appreciate that we got to bring that up here and talk about it. Because I don't have a big budget to kind of advertise it.
Yeah, no, that's part of why I wanted you on here, because I
Thank
think
you.
it's great what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks.
It needs to be done, and you're doing it.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I appreciate it. I appreciate what you guys are doing. This is 208, 209.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Well, that's.
Yeah, sometimes they go off the rails, but most of the time they're like this. It's really
Yes.
good information, man.
Nice. I love it. And what inspired you to do this?
To do this, well, because I'm a social worker, so I do counseling, I do group stuff with all kinds of stuff, mostly mental health and addiction nowadays. But,
Yes.
But so we run we have a charity called Freedom's Path Recovery Society.
Yes.
And through that charity, I wanted to share stories like yourself, like all the stories we share, with people who might never get into a 12-step room. So or a smart room, or wherever,
Yes.
or refuge, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is. Mm-hmm. People find that works for them.
Yes.
I really wanted to try to reach out in the dark, and this is the only way I know how to do that.
Yeah.
Like reach out in the dark with these stories that will help people.